you for being a guest here at calmclass.com. This website is dedicated to one thing: to be able to give you a different mindset. To be able to stay calm in tough times is by changing how you think, because when you change how you think, it changes how you live. My name's Dwight Bain. I'll be your host through most of these lessons, but I'm really glad that you found us. I'm really glad that you're taking time out to watch a lesson that will be life-changing. So do this. Take good notes. Download the study guides. Let these life application principles make your life a better place. And then would you let us know how this is helping you? My thanks to you for watching. My thanks to our incredible team for making it happen. But most of all, my thanks to God, because He gives us principles that will change our life if we use them. Are you ready? Let's get started. Right. Well, welcome to Calm Class. Let's have a word of prayer and we will start our lesson today. Father God, thank you for these friends and those that join us online. Thank you especially for this topic, to be able to talk about the importance of who makes the difference. The people here, God, they make a difference. We pray for each other. We encourage each other. We're not doing life alone. God, you need people. People make the difference. And so I pray that you would use today's lesson to change hearts, but God, most of all, use it to change mine. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So he was the original Ronald McDonald. He started working for the NBC company, the National Broadcasting Company in Washington, D.C., when he was 16 years old as a page, as an intern. And he went on to become not only extremely famous, but as someone who grew up in a Baptist church, he's had the opportunity to speak at Baptist churches all around America. You remember him most not for being the original Ronald McDonald, not for starting one of the most popular radio shows in Washington, D.C. In fact, during the 1960s, they said the man, he was introduced, and he was in his 20s, they said the man, or 30s, they said the man who's more popular than the president, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Willard Scott. Yep. Did you know that about Willard Scott? No. When he was hosting in Washington for over 20 years, his radio show was so popular because he had a blind co-host. And they did different sketches and different things. Willard Scott, of course, the host of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Willard Scott, who in 1983, somebody wrote in a note and said, "My mother is turning 100, would you announce her birthday?" And he's been doing that ever since. But the reason I bring up Mr. Willard Scott, I love this. Listen to, he said this is his favorite, he's written 7 books. Patty said this is his favorite comment from someone who read one of his books. Now you have to stay with the story. Here we go, it's a letter. "Dear Mr. Scott, I think you're the best disc jockey in Washington. You play the best music and have the nicest voice of anyone on the air. Please excuse the crayon. They won't let us have anything sharp in here." He worships at the First Baptist Church of Alexandria, Virginia, where he grew up. And one of the great things about Willard isn't the fact that he became very popular and very successful. One of the things you did not know about our fellow Southern Baptist, Willard Scott, is that he was passionate about adding value to other people. And in fact, there was a guy who today would be a cartoonist or a graphic designer, graduated from Xavier University, and he said, I don't know what made me think of it, but I reached out to Willard Scott and said, could I interview you, could I ask you some questions? And so Al Roker went to Mr. Willard Scott, and Willard said, do you really want to be a cartoonist? He said, let me tell you about what the weather has done for me. Because no matter what else I was doing, because he's an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, he said, no matter what else I was doing, he said, I did the weather. Because people want to know about the weather up in their neck of the woods, right? But what you didn't know is that you'd have never heard of Al Roker if a man named Willard Scott had not took an interest in him. Now here's the great thing, because all of you know the most valuable card I carry in my wallet. Most valuable card. It is not my Blockbuster video card. That's just there to remind me things change fast. It's not cash. I have college-age children and a wife. There's no cash. I mean, it's like the guy who, the criminal stole his wallet, and his friend said, did you report your wallet stolen? And he said, no, the criminals spend less than my family. This is a better deal. Most valuable card in my wallet, it's not my Blue Cross Blue Shield healthcare card. That's going away. Most valuable card, library card. Library card. Now, how many of you, honestly, how many of you adults have a library card? This is a well-educated group. Ruth, I don't see your hand up. Was there a problem? Is it arthritis? I mean,
We have a library.
Yeah, I have a library.
oh, that's true. Yeah, she has Pat's library, 70,000 volumes at home. Good point, Alicia. Good point.
I like to buy books because I like to write in them.
You like to buy books to write in them. Well, here's the thing. The reason I brought up the library is I go every week because Mom and Dad said, hey, you know what? You've got to keep learning. So every week I go to the library. Orange County Public Library, one of the best in America. I mean, you talk to people in other places and they just say, you have a library like that? If you want to learn Spanish, the whole second floor of the downtown library is now career development, free classes. You want to learn how to fly a plane? They have a full flight simulator. So you can learn to become a pilot. You understand if you have a library card, all those things are free, right? Over 1,000 career training classes a month. I'm not here to do a PSA, a public service announcement for the library, but I'm just stunned. Get this, only 6%, Craig, 6% of the people in America, adults in America, have a library card. Don, more than 6% of the people in America, adults in America, believe Elvis is still with us. I mean, to give you a comparison. So I'm at the library because I want to learn more about coaching, more about communication, more about counseling, and more about the one subject I teach on, which is change. And by just a fluke, I find Katie Couric's audio book, The Best Advice I Ever Got. I always liked Katie, especially after she did her colonoscopy on the air. I thought, anybody who lost a husband to colon cancer, the second most common form of cancer, who said, you know what, my parents taught me to make a difference, and this may be embarrassing to some, but did you know that the year after Katie did that colonoscopy, exams went up 24%? And so I've always respected her, that when she was 22 years old, because this is a little bit autobiographical, and then there are over 200 different famous people who said, the best advice I ever got. Morgan Freeman, best advice I ever got. General Colin Powell, best advice I ever got. Oprah Winfrey, best advice I ever got. Alicia Keys, I mean, you pick someone, they're in here, and I thought, because I'm always listening to audiobooks, and then I hear Al Roker talking about how that Willard Scott made all the difference in his life. He said, I'd be a graphic designer, I'd be working in New York maybe. He said, I would have never experienced, but I had a man who made a difference. A man took an interest in me, and he said, back when he took an interest in me, you just didn't see people taking an interest in guys of color. He said, but he took an interest in me, and it's made all the difference in the world. And so I'm having lunch with Pat Williams a couple of months ago, and Pat said, what's the connection between coaching and leadership and mentoring and counseling? What's the connection? And Pat, you got me thinking about this. And that's really kind of the catalyst behind this lesson. But then as I started talking to some other people, I said, what do you think it takes? Who does it take? What does it take to be extremely successful? And I came up with a list. So if you'll take a look in your study guide, because King Solomon said, iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Look at the list. What is the secret to a successful life? I'm almost completely done with Katie Couric's listing, and she'll set up a topic, and then there are literally dozens and dozens and dozens. And the cool thing is, because it's audio, you can hear these different people saying, here's the best, Ken Burns on the best advice he ever got from the playwright Arthur Miller, who said, gave him, one paragraph about the importance of bridges. I mean, it's really riveting stuff to hear these great thinkers of the last 50, 60 years. But from that list, and talking to some other people, here we go. What is the secret to achieve a successful life? Well-educated. Okay. Now you have a study guide. If you're watching calmclass.com, make sure you download the study guide. If you're listening to the podcast and you're biking or jogging while you're listening, do not download the study guide. I do not want you to wreck your bike. All right. But if you have your study guide, I want you to check off. What do you need to be successful? Do you have to be well-educated? Do you have to be lucky? You have to be in the right place at the right time. It was interesting to hear some of the different people talk about it, the right place, right time. Katie Couric, 22 years old, fresh out of college, goes to an ABC producer in Washington, D.C. and says, I'd like to apply for the job of covering the White House. And she said, I don't know what gave me the courage to do that at 22, because she couldn't even get an interview, but her sister knew someone who knew someone, and you know the rest of that story. Right place, right time? Okay, is that the secret? Rich parents. Is that the secret? Or a rich uncle? An attractive spouse, is that the secret? If you watch Desperate Housewives or Real Housewives, then you would think, well, if I just have an attractive spouse, that's the secret to success. Vegas, baby. It was interesting. I was talking to some people in an airport, and I said, what do you think the secret of success is? I don't know where they were headed, but they said Vegas. Yeah, you got to win the lottery. That's the secret. Church membership, is that the secret to success? Willard Scott would tell you it kept him grounded. To be a sharp dresser. Dressing for success. Is that the secret? Is that going to get you the jobs, the opportunities? Having a great wardrobe, a great resume. LinkedIn.com. Do you look good online? Having loyal friends. Is that the secret? Is it to be young and energetic or to be old and experienced? Which one do you think is the greater secret of success? Is it having great coaches, to be around strong leaders, to have wise mentors? Is it to have godly parents? See the line underneath there where it says, what are your top 3? Let's take a minute at your table. You've already introduced yourself to the people at your table, so take a minute now and answer the question. What do you think are the top 3 categories to be successful? And we had some people come in late, so if you came in late, just do introduce yourself again. We don't have name tags with so many visitors, but make sure that the people at your table know your name. So introduce your name again, and then answer the question. What are the top 3? Go. All right, so let's get some replies from our studio audience. What do you think? What were your top 3? Top 3. What top 3 things on the list? Anybody?
Great coaches.
Great coaches.
Wise mentors.
Wise mentors.
Godly parents.
Godly parents. All right, so Don had those 3. All right. Who else?
Proverbs 16:3.
Proverbs 16:3. Read it, Barbara.
It was his. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established.
Good. I like it. All right, when you think about your top 3, what'd you talk about at your table? Other people. Yeah, Tim said.
Vegas.
Tim, Tom, Ted. Godly leaders? Strong leaders?
Strong leaders, yeah.
You know, I realize how many names. Tim and Jim and Ted and Fred and Tom. And just call me Dwayne. I get called Dwayne every day of my life. It's fine. Yeah, do you? Yeah. All right, other 3. Yeah, Eloise.
Hey, Dwight, this is a test from you. You're going to say, at the end, you're going to say, none of these are that important. It's your relationship with the Lord. I just know you're going to say that. I've been canceled by
There's
you.
always a spoiler, you know?
So that reminds me of a story. I mean, you remember Brother Jim? Brother Jim was always funnier telling the joke than the joke. But one of his favorite jokes was, a pastor goes into the Sunday school, the primary Sunday school with the 5-year-olds, and he says, children, kindergartners, what has a bushy tail and climbs oak trees and fills its cheeks full of acorns to save for the winter? And the class is just totally silent. And then one of the little kids raises her hand and she says, I know the answer is supposed to be Jesus, but it sounds like a squirrel. I am not going to trick you. I am not going to trick you. In your study guide. Hey, here's the secret. Here's the secret. There's no secret. It's maybe not the Vegas part, but a lot of those are important. But I want you to know, here's the main thought. You cannot be successful by yourself. All right? Let me say it again. You cannot be successful by yourself. Let me say it again. You cannot be successful by yourself. To those who are tweeting, Shelley, I know you're here. To those that are tweeting, you cannot be successful by yourself. Nobody accomplishes success by themselves. Alex Haley has a saying where he said, if you see a turtle up on top of a fence post, he didn't get there by himself. Did you have a comment?
Define successful.
Define successful. Success is going to be different for a lot of people, but because for some people, success might be financial accomplishment. One of the great things about Warren Buffett is how he spends time with Bill Gates, saying it's not about making money. It's not about making money, Bill. It's about giving it away. It's interesting, in a magazine that I read called Wired for Technology, which is kind of geeky techno, but they just lit the pages up because somebody wrote an editorial blog post on their website that said, in 50 years, nobody will know who Steve Jobs is, but everybody will remember Bill Gates. And the reason was, and of course it just lit up because it's a tech magazine, so everybody who wants to worship Steve Jobs got mad, but he based it on one thing. Bill Gates has been busy giving away billions of dollars, giving away billions of dollars. In fact, to our local Valencia college, where I went for my first 2 years of college, The Gates Foundation gave them $5 million because they said it's the best community college in America, the best outcomes. 92% of Valencia graduates have a job at graduation, 92%. UCF, 54%. Double the outcomes, and it's because Sandy Shugart, who's a strong believer, leads that, but the Gates Foundation's busy giving it away. Steve Jobs is remembered for inventing things, not remembered as a philanthropist. So success for some people is to have a jet. Success for other, it's to have the right jet, the right car, the right house, the right stuff. For some men, it's to have all the biggest yachts. For some women, it's to find that man. It's like, okay, how can I find? Go, baby, go! Good point, good question. Back in your study guide. So Pat got me thinking, what do you need? Well, you need a little bit of all that, but you certainly need strong leaders. How do we define strong leaders? From Pat's book. Pat talks about the 7 sides of leadership. Number 1 is vision. Vision. A strong leader has to have vision. Most companies don't have a leader with any vision at all. A strong leader has good communication skills. The greatest communication skill, escúchame por favor. Listen to me. Greatest communication skill is to know how to listen to people. Third, people skills. People skills. It's interesting. The class speech 101, which has been required for college freshmen forever, was recently dropped. John, you're a Harvard graduate, and education around the United States has dropped Speech 101 as a required class. It's an elective. Now the required class is called people skills. People skills, interpersonal skills, because so many people are great at video games and Facebook, they just don't know how to talk to another human being. Interpersonal skills, one of the greatest things that you need as a leader. Pat says, number 4, character. Can't have a leader without character. I know some leaders are characters. That's not the kind we're talking about. Competence. Competence. You get confidence after you have competence. Competence is having a skill set. It's being experienced. It's having that sense of internal competence, internal confidence. I know how to do this. Boldness. Remember, in life, courage favors the bold. If you're new to our class, by the way, there's an answer key at the end of the study guide. Yeah, and by the way, with the answer key, just because the answer key is there doesn't mean that I got them right, because frequently I'm typing very fast or my writing isn't the neatest. And so, but if you feel like you missed one, there's an answer key on the back page. As a matter of fact, if you do the answer key, this is really helpful. You can do the answer key, and then you can play Candy Crush or Words with Friends the rest of the time. And then that way you already have the study guide itself completed, right? You'll be able to pass the exam at the end of the test. Boldness. Courage favors the bold. And then finally, a serving heart. A serving heart. Now, when I think about this idea of great leaders, Coach Vince Lombardi, Green Bay Packers, widely quoted long after he's gone, but listen to what he said. Here's a guy who had won everything, seen as a great leader. Listen to what he said. After the cheers have died down and the stadium is empty, after the headlines have been written and after you are back in the quiet of your room, the championship ring has been placed on the dresser next to the others, and after all the pomp and the fanfare have faded, the enduring thing that is left is the dedication to doing with our lives the very best we can to make the world a better place in which to live. It's interesting, when you meet someone, that's why it's so apropos to say define success. When you meet someone who's really successful, the coolest thing is how often they'll say, you know what, I'm not just going to stay here and live in these old memories. I'm going to go and teach some other people. I had a chance as an executive coach to go visit the home of, in his sport, the greatest athlete of his time. He had won every award that you could win. 10,000 square foot home. The reason I tell you this is because he lived there alone. No spouse, no girlfriend, no people, because he was a hard person to live with. Because he accomplished everything. I can't even say the name of his sport because you'd guess who it was. He'd accomplished everything except for one thing. He had never been successful at relationships. Even the cat. He said, one of my girlfriends had a cat, and he said it used to, she left the cat. He said, I don't even know where the cat went. Even the cat couldn't get along with the guy. That's not really success. The thing that I love are the Willard Scott stories of somebody who's achieved great success who says, hey, you're new? Hey, watch this. Let me open the door for you. Let me open the door for you. That's success. That's what great leaders do. They say, here's what I learned. Can I teach it to you? Listen to this. This is from King David, Psalm 71:18. Just write down the reference. Psalm 71:18. King David said, "So even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me, until I proclaim your might to another generation and your power to those to come." Here's the sad thing about King David. King David knew the clock was ticking. All right, so here's your hourglass. King David had accomplished greatness, and he enjoyed it. And guess what the problem was? He wrote it down in his journal. We call that the Psalms. He didn't teach it to his kids. He didn't teach it to his mighty men. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel that David had 30 mighty men. I mean, these were warriors. These were champions. In fact, David killed Goliath. He killed the biggest. But when you see in the Bible, in 1 Samuel 17, that David picked up 5 smooth stones, it's because Goliath had 4 brothers. It wasn't, like a 6-shooter. I mean, he could sling a stone at a hair. Well, okay, I don't have hair, but at a hair's breadth. He could sling a stone, and when that stone hit Goliath in the forehead, it would be the equivalent of a .45 caliber bullet. I mean, when you would release the stone, he didn't pick it up because he thought he'd miss Goliath. Goliath had 4 brothers that were there. He thought he was going to have to take them all. And see, 5 giants, 5 stones should do it. Wow, that's confidence in God's greatness. So here's David saying, God, don't let me die. Don't let me run out of time until I teach someone. Here's the problem. He didn't. King David had the kingdom 40 years. His son Solomon, as a special blessing from God, had the kingdom 40 years, but had a lot of problems. David had problems with women. Solomon had big problems with women. I mean, Solomon is the one who had 300 wives, 700 mistresses. He's also the one who said it's better to live in a hunting camp by yourself than to live with all of these women in the mansion who are complaining. So those of you who wonder, why are there so many hunting camps in the Southeast? There's your reason right there. Yeah, it's not because they want to go kill Bambi. No, it's because they want to get away from Bambi. I mean, that's the deal. King David did not teach his son. Solomon did not teach his son. Rehoboam had the kingdom 5 days. 5 days. And lost it. That's how it works. In multi-generational family business planning and succession planning, because if you don't teach it, then somebody here doesn't get it, and then it's gone. Oh, by the way, I just described Christianity in the United States. My wife and I were at the grand opening of a church called Orlando Christian Center, which sold at auction this week. Benny Hinn started that church, and Brother Benny, I was on Christian television, Benny was on Christian TV. He said, be at our grand opening. So we got to sit in the VIP section, and it was a big event. Big church in the Altamont Springs area, 15 acres. Benny left for California a long time ago, but the church was still there, but it sold at auction this week, bankrupt. Guess what's happening to religion in the United States? The biggest church in Florida, Carpenter's Home Church over in Lakeland, seats 10,000. It's been boarded up and bankrupt for years. One of the ministers serving almost a 40-year prison sentence. Guess what's happening to religion in America? If you don't have someone to teach it, it doesn't go on. That's why we need strong leaders. But I teach a lot on coaching. In fact, this week in San Diego, I'm talking to coaches. So what are the benefits of having a coach? There are 4. 1, a coach helps you see your potential. A coach helps you see your potential. God gave all of us potential. If you don't believe that, then you don't believe God. He gave us something unique as a fingerprint, unique as DNA. He has a special purpose for you, and you have to see your potential. A coach helps you see that. A coach helps you with performance. A coach helps you with performance. It's not just to see your potential, it's to say, come on, let's go. And they're able to challenge you toward greater performance. A coach challenges you with personal power. When you read about some of the coaches that Pat has known through the years, great coaches challenge people. They play at a better level because they have a great coach who says, come on, and is pushing them and challenging them to live at a higher level. And a coach helps people see their purpose in life. I think Solomon in some ways may be the original life coach. Proverbs has so much to say from a coaching perspective. I could do a whole lesson on that. But here's what I want you to see. A coach takes you two places. One, they help you see where you are now. And then two, they help you see where you want to go. A coach helps you to be able to see the reality of where you are now, and then they help you to see where you want to go. Now here's the thing. Next to where it says in your study guide where you are now, would you write in comfort zone? Because where you are now is your comfort zone. Okay? A coach doesn't let you stay in your comfort zone. A coach challenges you, here we go, arrow up, toward your potential. Right? If you do things, if you do everything, the same way that you've always, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, right? A coach challenges you, get out of the comfort zone, let's get into your potential. Let's challenge you about performance. But there's more to it because, coaches challenge people to follow a common path, analyze. Okay, what's going on in your life? Coaches ask good questions. Then they develop an action plan. Then they hold people accountable. But here's the thing I want you to know about coaching. In Pat's book, How to Be the Ultimate Teammate, just came out. Let's put it on the bestseller list. Because one of the things that Pat talks about that I thought was really interesting, quoting from the Chicago Bulls, Phil Jackson, he also coached at the Lakers, in total 11 NBA championships. He said, the day I took over the Chicago Bulls, I vowed to create an environment based on principles of not being selfish and compassion. I knew the only way to win was to give everybody from the stars to the number 12 player on the bench a vital role on the team and to inspire them to be acutely aware of what was happening. And even when the spotlight was on somebody else, remember that was the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen years. Even when the spotlight was on somebody else, he said, more than anything else, I wanted a team that would blend individual talent with a heightened sense of group consciousness, of watching out for the other guy. Pat says if you want to be a great teammate, you must immerse yourself into that heightened group consciousness. You must think team, not think yourself. Think unity, not individual achievement. And then, Pat, you go on and you say, talent is important, but teamwork is more important. So here's how it works. If you have talent and you have no one person there to challenge you, help you, hold you accountable, then what I just described is frequently seen in the music business and professional sports. Elvis Presley had incredible talent. Well, hunka hunka burning love, baby. When his mother died, he had no accountability. Colonel Parker made a lot of money off of him that Priscilla got back after his death. But he didn't have that one person in his life, and you can see Elvis's career kind of do that and do that. In fact, you can see a lot of people's careers, they zoom up, but when they don't have accountability, they don't have a coach, they don't have somebody around them to push them, to challenge them, to hold them accountable, then what you have is talent plus being alone equal disaster, equal tragedy. Talent plus, I'll call it a mentor, equals greatness. Al Roker's still working because Willard Scott still meets with him. Right. And that process is mentoring, ladies and gentlemen. In your study guide, the Bible has a lot to say about mentors. Naomi mentored Ruth. When you look in the Bible, you'll see that Barnabas mentored a guy named John Mark, wrote the book of Mark. Barnabas mentored the one guy that nobody wanted to spend time with. Barnabas mentored the Apostle Paul. Paul mentored Timothy and Titus and Philemon. Here's the thing about mentoring. Bob Proctor said a mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in you and helps bring that talent out of you. So when you think about that, here's the Bible teaching, even though it's not always modeled, the Bible teaches you need to have someone in your life who challenges you. Here's some basic facts. We all need a mentor in order to reach our potential. You need someone in your life. You cannot be successful alone, however you define success. Remember Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Oprah Winfrey had some producers who took an interest in her. Nobody achieves success by themselves. One of the great things I love about the film producer Tyler Perry is that he's gone from being homeless to being successful to saying, I'm going to start a production company in Atlanta, and I'm going to help a lot of young people learn how to be successful in the television and the film industry. He said, because we need different voices that are not afraid to live out their Christian faith. And although I've never met Tyler Perry, I want to hug him and give him a kiss and say, man, that's it. It's not, I'm going to build a bunch of stuff, and then I'm going to get a bigger house to put it in, and then I'm going to get some more stuff, and I'm going to get another bigger house to put it in. This week I was reading from a clutter coach who was talking about the importance of not having a storage unit. Of just dealing with the clutter, not just in your storage unit, because she said that just, for most people, the storage unit costs more than the stuff in the storage unit. It's just, I want to put stuff in the storage unit because I don't want to deal with it. And if you have somebody in your life who challenges you, then you can deal with it. Mentoring is a growing process that never ends. Did you know that trees grow until they die? Trees grow until they die. And mentoring is a process that never ends. Mentors are usually older, but they're definitely wiser. They're definitely wiser. Valdosta, Georgia, the big green frog in, Bill Darden, after World War II, took an interest in a kid that had been adopted named Joe Lee and said, you're a hardworking guy. I want you to work in my restaurant here in South Georgia. And he came back and he said, I'm just Joe the cook. I'm just a cook. He said, but you work hard. I admire that. And Joe Lee worked hard in South Georgia, worked hard in Lakeland, Florida, worked hard in Orlando. And when they said, we're going to start, this company you started, Red Lobster, and this company you started, the Olive Garden, and this company that you started, we want to give it your name, Joe Lee. And Joe said, no. Bill Darden gave me my start. Bill Darden showed me how to run a hospitality business. We're going to name the company the Darden Restaurant Group. Don't you love stories like that? And Joe Lee, just a simple cook, his kids were involved in this church and involved in the First Academy while they lived in Central Florida. He's retired now, but I love telling that story because it's the idea of saying, hey, I need somebody older and wiser. Mentoring is more than teaching, it involves training. And would you put next to that the word sweat? Because if you don't have some training, if you don't have some sweat equity, if you don't have some skin in the game, you're not going to be successful. Mentoring is similar to the biblical process of discipleship. It's similar to discipleship, but here's what I know. In the mentoring process, there's some investment. Mentoring is being able to say, I want to train you. And here's how it works. If you struggle with compulsive behavior, or you know people in your life that struggle with compulsive behavior, addictive behavior, pornography, gambling, drugs, alcohol, food addiction, spending addiction, here's how it works. Arrow up, the greater the training, equal, arrow down, temptation. The more training that you have, the more discipline you have, the less you get tempted. It's a process of WW, what would my mentor do? How does that say? See, what would my mentor do? So WWMMD. What would my mentor do? Because it's being able to say, okay, how can I learn from what they do? More training equal less temptation. 2 Timothy 2, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable men who will be qualified to teach others. A mentor, according to Webster's, is a wise and trusted counselor or teacher. I'm sorry, that's dictionary.com. A disciple is one who follows the teaching and training of another. All right, so a disciple is following a mentor is in that teacher role. So ask yourself the following questions. Remember Master Yoda, try, don't try, there is no, try not. I never get it right. I'll just read it. Try not. Do or do not. There is no try. That's it. Talking to the famous Jedi Luke Skywalker. So who've been your greatest mentors? Fill in the blank. Who've been your mentors? Well, mine, David Hurd. 16-year-old teenager, and David Hurd, the youth pastor at my church, took an interest in me. My parents introduced me to a guy named Tom Moffitt, who owned a local Christian radio station, and I stacked records. Remember records? Back in the 1970s. One of the connection points I have with the Christian singer Amy Grant is while she was recording Daddy's Eyes and doing her first recording in the 1970s, I was stacking her records. And when I first met her, she said, are you still stacking records? How's it going for you? I said, well, I'm glad that you moved forward. When you take a look at this, who were your Who are the people on on that line in your study guide? Where would you go to find a great mentor? Where would you go? Well, I would say, look for successful people in the field that you want to be mentored in, but definitely go to your local public library. Who's mentoring you at this stage of life? Remember, media counts. You want to get mentored by Pat Williams, co-founder of the Orlando Magic, NBA Hall of Fame? You can be mentored through books. You can be mentored through audiobooks, right? CDs. You can be mentored electronically. You can also sit and watch Modern Family until you're not mentored to do anything. So as you take a look at this, the big question: who are you mentoring? Who are you mentoring? Remember, somebody is watching you right now. It's Big Brother. I mean, you knew it was the National Security Administration, right? Somebody's watching you. Who are you mentoring? Who are you showing this is what I believe? So here's the greatest story in the Bible about mentoring. I mean, the Moses-Joshua story is a great story, but the story of Elijah and Elisha in 1 Kings 19. Look at 1 Kings 19, verse 18. God said, I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, all whose mouths have not kissed the idol. And Elijah had reached a place of clinical depression. He was suicidal, and he said, God, I want to give up. And God said, you've got to train somebody. You've got to equip somebody. And so I've given you the principles. There are 7 different principles of finding a great mentor, of having somebody to come alongside and say, are you doing what you were put on this earth to do? You see, there are 4 different zones. This is from a clinical teaching I do on this. And if you look at the upper right quadrant zone, if you're watching at calmclass.com, all right, so there's 4 zones. This is adapted from a mentoring book in 2002. Let's see where it says highly structured, long-term, often used for succession planning, grooming someone to take over a departing person's position or a master craft. So when you think about mentoring, there are 4 different zones, 4 different kinds. Here's the biggest thing I found, and God's allowed me to speak at conferences and train professionals in the field of counseling, in the field of law, in the field of business, in the field of coaching. And I can tell you that when I teach on this subject, most people will come up later, and Ruth, they'll say, I've never had a mentor. I mean, these are business people. These are people that are well established in their careers. These aren't graduate schools. But in graduate schools, sometimes more people have mentors than people who are out in business. So 7 principles. Number 1, you have to be ready when the mentor arrives. You have to be ready when the mentor arrives. And do you see that picture in your study guide? That's a picture of my mentor, Elmer Towns, co-founder of Liberty University. Sitting at his desk, Elmer's in his 80s, written over 100 books. Now get this. So I go to Liberty University, and I've never been to Lynchburg, or I've been to Lynchburg, Virginia to take the tour, but I'm living there now. I don't know a soul. And the new student picnic orientation. And I get there, like 2 hours early because I don't know anybody. I don't know anything to do. And I get there early, and I'm waiting and sitting in my car, and to save gas, I've got the windows rolled down. It's August. And then this Buick pulls up, and this old bald guy gets out. The funny thing is, Elmer was younger then than I am now. But to me, in my 20s, he looked old. And he gets out, and he's getting a box. And I said, here, let me help you. And I introduced myself, because Mom always said, introduce yourself. And I said, hi, I'm Dwight Bain from Orlando, Florida. He said, oh, you're that guy that we let in on academic probation. I said, that's me, yeah. He said, I'll never forget this. Jay, he said, I'm taking a chance on you, young man. And Elmer's been my friend ever since. There's an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Amen.
And that day, I remember where I was standing. Elmer said, I took a chance on you. And we have lunch a couple times a year, and he's always opened doors for me. And he's always blessed me. And he's done that with dozens and dozens of people. But I'm telling you, you have to be ready. And if you're busy keeping up with reality television and you're keeping up with your Twitter feed, you're not going to be ready when the mentor arrives. Number 2, you have to give up in order to go up. You have to give up in order to go up. You have to give up bad habits. You have to give up hopeless thinking. You have to give up, I could never do anything. And you also have to, listen, you have to give up other people's dreams for you. There's a place in Southern California, I'm sad to tell you that today, the man who started it, it ended in bankruptcy, one more church, the Crystal Cathedral. You may remember Robert Schuller, The Hour of Power. For 40 years, Bob Schuller had a vision. He said, I've got a 40-year vision for this place.
Wow.
The problem was 40 years came, and nobody was trained to take over. And the whole thing collapsed in bankruptcy. The building was sold to the Catholic Diocese of Los Angeles. And so it's used today as a house of prayer, and I'm thankful for that the architecture's still there. But wouldn't it have been better if somebody had said, let's give up the old ways, let's give up somebody else's dream, and let's be able to say, you know what, let's grow in a new direction. I'm telling you, churches don't have to end, but the old way of doing things has to. You have to give up. Principle number 3, or underneath that where it says Elisha's preparation, leadership principle, from our friend John Maxwell's Leadership Study Bible, the Maxwell Study Bible. Here's what we know about Elisha. He was anointed to replace Elijah. Leaders must understand that they have a calling. Elijah found him plowing a field, which tells us that Elisha had a servant's heart. He wasn't afraid to sweat. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. Elisha touched Elisha's mantle long before he entered his ministry. You don't just show up one day and say, hi, Al Roker, I'd like your job. Doesn't work like that. You show up a long time before. He asked to kiss his parents goodbye. We see that in the scripture, which tells us that leaders must respect parental authority. He burned his farming tools. Leaders must surrender their former ambitions. Remember, that was in a day and an age when slavery was 80% of the population. And Elisha was from a wealthy family, and he said, I'm going to quit the old way. I'm going to burn, like Cortez. I'm going to burn the ships. We're not going back. If you take a look at this, he stuck with Elijah wherever he went, because a leader understands you have to have a good mentor, and you have to stay close to your mentors. And Elisha absorbed all he could from Elijah. And see where it says leaders must hunger to grow and develop? Would you write next to that the words leaders never stop growing? If you ever stop growing, it'll all be gone. You must make every minute count. You must make every minute count. Because I can tell you this with leaders, it won't last forever. Remember when I heard the news that Jerry Falwell had died? And even though a lot of people criticized him, the Reverend Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson were on the Larry King Show, and they were talking about how that, you know what? He made a difference. And the last time I was sitting in Jerry's office, I don't know what prompted me the last time we were together in his office. I don't know what prompted me to say, when this is over, what do you want to be remembered for? And he said, Ephesians 4:15. I said, what is that? He said, look it up. I've memorized it now. But I looked it up and I read it with the Liberty Study Bible in his office. And it said, speaking the truth in love. He said, stop. He said, that's what I want to be remembered for. Not I, but Christ. I told him the truth and I loved him. And then when I had heard that he had died, and I called Elmer. And I said, Jerry's gone. And he said, nobody appreciates a great man or a great mentor until he's gone. And I said, you know what? That's true. The time is short, so you make every minute count. Number 4, you have to stand firm against your peers. You have to stand firm against your peers. Listen to this from 2 Kings. The company of prophets at Jericho went up to Elijah and said, don't you know the Lord's going to take your master away from you today? Yeah, I know it, he said, but don't speak of it. You have to stand firm. The peer group challenged him, and you have to stand against that. Number 5, you have to stay connected to strong leaders. You have to stay connected to strong leaders. Because if not, what happens? You get arrogant. Remember, talent plus no one equal disaster. And you'll see that happen more and more and more. If you don't have someone in your life that challenges you, holds you accountable, if you don't have that safe, godly mentor, and you try to go it alone, you'll crash. Randall Ponders, a leadership consultant, I've given you a list of what he calls the qualities of a leader. I think between Pat's list and this list, think about the boss that you have in your life. Because if your boss is your mentor and they don't have a lot of those qualities, then you need to find a different mentor. Maybe find a different job. Number 6, you have to be ready to ask for big things. You have to be ready to ask for big things. And when asked about it, Elisha had been following Elijah for a long time. And he said, the question that always comes up, it's the blank check question, Jared. And it's saying, I'm the leader, you're the guy I've been training to succeed this organization. What can I do for you? He gave him a blank check. And Elisha asked for big things. He said, oh, here's what I'd like. I'd like to do double the miracles that you did. And Elijah said, now you asked for a hard thing. But you know what that does? When somebody who's being mentored says, I want to have twice the influence. It's not a statement of arrogance, remember. It was, I want this culture. Elijah had been running and hiding for his life. For 3.5 years, he ran and hid in caves, ran for his life because the government had turned against religious leaders. So for Elisha to say, I want to do double, well, it meant certain death. But he said, I want to stand bold for the kingdom. He wasn't asking out of arrogance. It wasn't about money, not at all. It was about, I want to make twice the difference that you made. And when you read through 2 Kings, you'll see that he did exactly twice the miracles of his mentor. Number 7, you have to hold up the ladder for other people. You have to hold up the ladder for other people. Zig Ziglar said, the solution to a problem I had wrestled with for 3 solid months came to me when I completely forgot about my needs and I became engrossed in finding a way to meet the needs of others. And when you think about this, and I hope you do, I mean, I put a lot of thought, it takes me most of Friday to create a study guide. And you understand that with the study guide, I write them so that you can take them to work and you can teach them to other people. Because then, instead of it being, Dwight teaching you, it's Dwight mentoring you with some ideas that you can take to work or Bible studies. Can you scan these and send these to friends? Of course. I mean, I write things every week. I post 5 times a day on social media to add value to your journey so that you can go help somebody else. It's a poem that a lady in a retirement center on the northern coast of New Jersey, before the casinos got kicked in, she gave me the freedom to share a poem that she wrote for a Methodist children's musical in 1964. Her name was Helen Kroner. And Helen wrote these words, one man awake can awaken another, and the second can waken his next door brother, and the 3 awake can awaken the town by turning the whole place upside down, and the many awake can make such a fuss that they finally awaken the rest of us. One man up with dawn in his eyes multiplies. Helen wrote that for a children's musical for the 4th of July, 1964. The Reader's Digest picked up the story, and that's how I heard about it. And before she died, I said, Helen, I just love that poem. Can I share that? And she said, share it across America. Because when one person makes a difference in the life of one person, you know what happens? You know what happens? You change a culture. If I can teach you something, and you go, I get it, and then you can take that and you can teach someone, that's how you change a culture. It's not electing better people. We tried that. And let them do the work, it didn't work, right? It's changing your heart so that you can go change somebody else's heart. You know what happens? You change a culture. That's the process. That's why we have CALM class, Christian Attitude and Life Management. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, I have heart disease, my cardiologist tells me. And I keep telling him, don't be negative. And he said, okay, you have heart disease. Don't you hate surgeons who have a sense of humor? It's like, I'm paying for this. I mean, this just isn't even right. By God's grace, my life was spared. But I have, if you've ever seen in my office, I have one of these. It's about this big. A wonderful friend of mine gave me. It's 150 years old. It really keeps time to 60 minutes. It's an hourglass from Great Britain. And they weighed the sand. That's how they always got it to be 60 minutes, right? So there's no trick to it. And I have that, and I got that after coming out of the hospital. And she said, God gave you a second chance. Make every minute count. So when I think about who do you need in your life, yes, Eloise, you're right. You need Jesus. But you also need people with skin on. People around you to say, I see your potential. I see what you could be. Now go do it. Who do you have in your life that sees your potential, challenges you, and then says, now go do it. Go teach somebody else. Why do we need to say that every day? Because the time is short. But the good news is there's enough time. If you're living different, You don't have to have a Jesus sticker on your car. You need to drive like you have a Jesus sticker on your car. I know that's why some of you don't put Jesus stickers on your car, so that you can, zoom through tourists on the way to Disney and, tell them that they're number one, except you forget which finger to use for number one. I understand how this works. Time is short. Live different. Have mentors to challenge you so that you can live different, to then go teach other people. That's what God calls us to do. My prayer is that this will get you started. Let's pray. God, thank you for these friends and those that came to Calm Class in Orlando to learn. God, I may not even be alive when somebody watches this through these amazing technologies, but the message will live on, because the message lives on from my mentors who are gone. And what a blessing for the ones who aren't, to be able to say, you made a difference in my life, Pat Williams. You made a difference in my life, Steve Brown. You made a difference in my life, John Maxwell. You made a difference in my life, Elmer. You made a difference in my life, Mom and Dad. You made a difference in my life, David Hurd. And God, when we get to heaven, we'll be able to thank a lot of people. But my prayer is the people who watch and listen here and now will live differently in the time that we have remaining, so that other people can say, you're different. And we can say, let me tell you about how Jesus Christ changed my life. Hey, what do you think you were put on this planet for? Let's get busy doing it. May this stir us up, God. May it radiate from here and now, and I pray that in Christ's holy name. Amen. Hi, Dwight Bain here, and I want to tell you about calmclass.com. The website that you came to is actually a teaching lesson that we record in Orlando, Florida, every single week. You can actually come be part of the live audience. If you're in Florida, maybe you're visiting the Orlando area, come check us out. We meet at 3000 South John Young Parkway. It's on the campus of First Baptist Orlando, which is actually a pretty large place. So what you're looking for is a large building by a lake. It's a big 3-story building called Faith Hall. And we're in Faith Hall, upstairs in room 301. But if you don't get a chance to come live to the presentation in Orlando, then if these lessons about making your life work better, to get past frustration in relationships, maybe frustrations on the job, maybe you're just kind of feeling beat up about what you believe. If you enjoy these lessons, would you do me a favor? Would you tell a friend? Because by your experience of telling other people, hey, this website helped me, these lessons helped me, when you're doing that, you're helping take the message that we teach in Orlando and to be able to spread that to the entire world. And thanks.